Hello, welcome to the Marketplace. Coming up, ad hoc committee tasked to probe censure motion against Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta expected to complete its work today.
To finish their work by close of day today, and we hope that from tomorrow they will lay their report to the plenary.
Meantime, MPP MP still asking Mr. Ofori-Atta to resign, insisting he has lost credibility.
I would have thought that the very day that President said we will go to IMF, that should have been the day he would have resigned if he left me alone, because he had promised that we will never have to get there.
The MPP MPs have indicated they would not allow Ken Ofori-Atta to present the 2023 budget, but the Finance Minister has had none of that. He insists he will be presenting the budget.
Next week, will you be presenting the budget? Will you do it yourself?
Yeah, I expect so. That seems to be a weird question.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. First up, the fate of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is still uncertain after calls from both sides of the House for him to step down. Whilst the minority are poised to go ahead with a vote of censure, some majority MPs have indicated they will not do business through the Finance Minister if the President fails to remove him. This week is a critical week because we expect the committee hearing the censure motion to finalize its report. It is also the week we expect the 2023 budget to be presented to Parliament. Now, although MPs have indicated they would not allow Mr. Ofori-Atta to present the budget, he is very certain he'll make the presentation.
Finance Minister, how do you feel about this whole process? I mean, do you feel about this process? JoyNews Live.
I mean, I guess it's democracy in play, and we just seek fairness, and we are confident in how the process will evolve. So
next week, will you be presenting the budget? Will you do so yourself?
Yeah, I expect so. That seems to be a weird question.
What do you say to the MPP MPs who say they don't want you to do so next week?
I don't know. I haven't heard that officially, so I'll see. Anyway, but thank you. It's been a very long day.
Right, so that was the Finance Minister on Friday saying it was a weird question to ask him if he was the one going to present the budget. Well, the censure motion does not have the backing of the majority in Parliament, even though they also want the Finance Minister out. So if a vote is taken, the majority has indicated they would not partake. So on what basis is the majority then asking that the Finance Minister resigns? MP for Asante Achim North, Andy Apiakubi, who doubles as spokesperson for the group of MPP MPs who want the President to remove Mr. Ofori-Atta, has been speaking on the Super Morning Show.
And for which reason, indeed, for me, I would have thought that the very day that President said we will go to IMF, that should have been the day he would have resigned if he left me alone, because he had promised that we will never have to get there. And if indications are that we are going, then I think, to be honest with yourself and to be honest with the people of Ghana, you should have resigned. Because where is your credibility in going for the program? Because, and indeed leading it. Indeed, you had come out to say that never would we go to IMF. And you didn't only speak to Ghanaians, you spoke to the whole world. And indeed, IMF also heard you. So if it comes to a time that you have to lead the charge coming to the IMF, what will IMF think of you? And what will IMF think of our whole program? So we thought that you should have left the scene for somebody else to carry the mantle, go to IMF and say, my friend was wrong. Now we are here. Please deal with us. And you would have carried enough credibility talking to IMF then. So for me, at that point, if I was leading or part of the IMF team, I wouldn't have taken you seriously. So I think for that reason, to give Ghana a fair opportunity to interact or negotiate with IMF, I would have resigned if I was in his position.
If I may, I just want to put a couple of things to you and see if you agree or disagree. So, do you agree or disagree that the Finance Minister has engaged in conflict of interest, ensuring that he directly benefits from Ghana's economic woes as his companies receive commissions and other contractual advantage, particularly from Ghana's debt overhang?
My brother, that is along the prosecutorial tangent, and I'm not sure that we have considered that yet. But
Right.
if it becomes necessary to so do, we will look at the indicators, the figures, and speak to same.
So
So for now, we are not speaking to the conflict of interest situation as part of the package from the censure motion. We are not speaking to that.
Well, with or without the help of the majority in Parliament, NDC MPs are poised to carry out the censure vote. Here's Kwawu Tuforsin, who is ranking member on the Finance Committee of Parliament.
Minority, our position has not changed. We are not going to relent on this matter. We think our minister has been incompetent and ineptitude. We have said that he has misreported data to the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. We have seen clearly that he's been reckless in the management of the fiscal, and so therefore we are going to vote on the censorship motion. We expect the committee to finish their work by close of day today, and we hope that from tomorrow they will lay their report to the plenary. We will have an opportunity to vote on this, and we have said that we will stay and vote against the minister, and that is our position. We are calling on our colleagues from the majority to join us.
Well, joining us on Zoom is Professor Williams Prepara, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S. to discuss this. Grateful you could join us here. And so let's begin with the hearings that ended on Friday and whether or not the minority or the proponents of the censure vote were able to convince the committee and indeed all Ghanaians that the finance minister should go.
Thank you very much for calling me, and good afternoon to your viewers. So if you look at the proponents' motion, they wanted to prove a point that the Ghana's economic situation has reached an unsustainable point. So there were some questions that were asked, especially when we noticed that they were comparing 2016 Ghana's financial data as against the current financial data and pointing to the deterioration of the situation. This question in particular is in line with the functions of the finance ministry. So if you go to the Ministry of Finance website, one of their functions is to ensure sustainability of public debt. Where we have gotten to, we've noticed that according to the rating agencies, our debt has reached unsustainable point. So I'm sure some of these questions were able to help us analyze the situation. In the function of the Ministry of Finance, which is led by the Finance Minister, is also an effective allocation of resources. You see that the question on allocation of resources to the cathedral is one of the reasons why the minority is asking that the finance minister has not done very well. For me, what caught my attention was when the finance minister was trying to play on words and also using the statement that lying with statistics. He admitted that the financial data that was presented by the minority, which was led by Dr. Kwawu Tuforsin, is already known to everybody. So the question was that, why then did he use the lesser of the two? Because in proper management, if you have data, and you are trying to manage efficiency, you'll be cautious by using the one that gives you the worst situation so that it will not give room for you to go and borrow. So listening to the finance minister, they were aware that the data presented by Dr. Atuforsen is already known, but then per policy directions and where they wanted to go, especially to borrow more, they selected the lesser of the evil. So that is why they got room to borrow more, and then has brought us to this point. This is policy direction. I'm sure the argument between the two parties are clearly known because of where we are now.
And so, just back to the question, did the proponents, did they convince the committee, do you think?
I mean, they laid their case, especially pointing to the data, using the GDP statistical data, and then what rating agencies were saying. It might be said that not all the 7 points carried a lot of weight, but for me, the economic data really points to their case that yes, if you look at the function of the Ministry of Finance, a lot of things has gone wrong, and probably the leader must go backstage to get a new person to change the direction.
So the majority is not playing the minorities game, and they are saying, well, the basis for which we want the finance minister to go is because he has lost credibility. He said, we're not going to go for an IMF program, and we ended up going for it. Does that carry that much of a weight to get the finance minister out from the majority's perspective?
Yes, it's in the same line. I just want to read one function of the Ministry of Finance, which is led by the finance minister. So if you go to the website, it says that the finance ministry, which is led by the minister, must ensure effective and efficient allocation and prudent management of resources. Ensure efficient mobilization of domestic and external resources. So at the time that Ghanaians were saying that our liquidity was in a deplorable state and we may have to seek IMF support, the finance minister said no. Now we are going there to seek external resources. So it means that his indecisiveness is the one that has caused this particular situation where we find the cedi being devalued. Okay,
and meantime, the finance minister is unfazed. You saw them, my colleague Kwawu Asante asked him if he was going to present the budget on Thursday. He said, as far as he's concerned, he in fact described it as a weird question. We heard him say he was sorry. We heard him apologize on Friday about the state of affairs. But is that enough to get him to still be where he is? Isn't it time, or some would ask, that he just says, all right, I've heard you guys, I think I should be going?
Well, that's why for me, I don't understand why he's still fighting to make the presentation. Your own members are saying that because of lack of credibility, don't lead us in presenting the financial situation or the budget. You know, the budget is a policy statement of the government, so it has become critical. So he needs to probably consider a step aside, because if the minority does not get him out, his own people, with the strategies and what they have been saying, will force him to go out. So I'm sure the president should be having a backup plan to get somebody to present the budget on 24.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Williams-Pepra, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University. We'll be watching to see what happens on Thursday. Hopefully we can speak after that. Well, talk about the 2023 budget. Industry leaders are confident the International Monetary Fund program will help restore macroeconomic stability. That's according to a survey conducted by accounting and auditing firm KPMG, dubbed the 2023 pre-budget survey. Now, some respondents suggested that the program should emphasize debt sustainability whilst also promoting inclusive and long-term growth. Respondents also expect a review of the electronic transaction levy to allow more people pay. Joining us to dig into this further is Head of Markets and Advisory at KPMG, Andy Akoto. Thanks so much for your time. What did you seek to establish by this survey? What work went into it?
And thank you for giving me the audience to engage with your listeners. The survey, as we do it annually, seeks to solicit inputs from the business community, particularly a large segment of our clients, so that we can get their views heard as part of government's plans for the upcoming fiscal year. And before I go any further, let me also use this opportunity to disclaim some extreme views that have been expressed on our pre-budget survey report since it was released coming into the weekend. For the simple reason that, as I've already intimated, it is meant to solicit inputs and obviously ask for certain pointers that government can consider. And so, for example, if you then take a response on how MSMEs, for example, could be better integrated into the value chain and wider markets as a judgment on the government's poor performance in the sector, that is totally inaccurate and incorrect. Likewise, if you do, for example, take a view, as we've seen in some reportage, that planting for food and jobs has failed, whereas all that we were seeking to do was to solicit inputs for how expectations can be better met. And then of course, you are not doing justice to what we have put out there. So I also just wanted to bring that across. But more specific to your question, it is meant to obviously invite very constructive views to support government in coming up with a very responsive budget. Thank you.
All right, so you're talking about some of the reportage that you describe as misleading. Tell us, from your perspective, what were the highlights of or the takeaways based on the interactions you had with the business leaders? What were the sticking points?
Thank you. So, for example, respondents expected government to be a bit more intentional about their revenue mobilization efforts. We note quite a number of innovative measures put in place, for example, by the Ghana Revenue Authority recently. But these are yet to really take firm roots. And we've always spoken about the bit about extending the tax net. The question is whether we've been able to do that and do that constructively. Then again, for example, we are also looking at matters of environment, social, and governance, which is at the heart of government's effort to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And how has the government therefore rallied around to satisfy economic participants when it comes to tackling issues of procurement, malpractices, and corruption? Then we also talk about, for example, the steps being taken by government to tackle the Galamsey menace, which obviously is impacting the production cost of our respondents, particularly in terms of getting access to wholesome water supply, for example. So these were some of the key highlights that came from the survey.
I want us to talk about the IMF program because it appears the future of our economy is dependent on how the negotiations go. Do you get the sense from the business community they are upbeat about this program and its potential impact on the economy?
They are cautiously hopeful from the respondents. They are cautiously hopeful because at this point, with being denied access to the international capital markets and others, the expectation is that the conversation with the IMF can be concluded soon to restore policy credibility and confidence in our economy so that businessmen and captains can plan more confidently and with certainty on their plans for the coming year. So clearly, the expectation was that the IMF program can be concluded very, very quickly so that it will restore some sustainability and credibility to the way we manage our financial affairs.
One of the challenges we have faced as a country is raising revenue, and the e-levy has not yielded the expected results. Right now, there are calls on government to review it. I'm also reading from your survey, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the business leaders were concerned about too many taxes. So then, how do we raise revenue if that's their concern?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's a catch-22. But then again, as we all note, there are external headwinds that are fighting against the economy. So, for example, the IMF itself has reduced the projected global economic GDP growth from 4.4 to 3.2%. And that itself is very telling in terms of how they expect the matters to do with energy pricing and etc. to impact various economies around the world. In our case, if you look at the petroleum prices at the pump, it has gone up very, very steeply over the last few months. And that has obviously affected the cost of production for a number of respondents. Likewise, if you look at some of these levies, the thinking is that there could be some immediate measures to bring some relief in that respect. I mean, a lot of actors, for example, in the consumer industrial markets, will tell you that even though they are trying as much as possible to also participate in enhancing local production, quite a significant portion of their inputs are still sourced from outside. And for that matter, if there is no attempt to kind of adjust the import levy regime, it will continue to militate against their margins and, of course, their profitability. Likewise, e-levy, the respondents were very, very, very vocal to the extent that somehow it is adjusted downwards. Not to say that it is not useful, but that it should be adjusted downwards so that at least it can restore patronage to the pre-e-levy introduction levels.
Based on the survey, what are the recommendations to government?
Good question. Government is clearly being enjoined to be very creative and innovative in the upcoming budget preparation and submission. It cannot be business as usual. We all know that these are usual times. And that is why, for example, the recommendation is for government to be very innovative in pushing ahead with its ESG agenda to tackle some of the concerns such as galamsey and corruption, all of which impact on the poverty alleviation agenda in the SDGs. Likewise, people are also expecting that government can use technology-driven tools, for example, to optimize road tolls. Because if you are going to sustain our road infrastructure efficiently, we are going to need more revenue. Whereas the previous regime was a bit labor-intensive and time-consuming, government can be very innovative around this. Likewise, there has to also be a way of introducing some internal measures to ensure that government is able to use data from withholding VAT returns to enforce compliance.
All right, Andy Akoto, who is Head of Markets and Advisor at KPMG, joining us on the Marketplace. Appreciate your time and thank you. Now, finally, interest rates neared 36% on the money market, though fell short of the October 2023 inflation rate of 40.4%. Now, this indicates that 2022, rather, I'm ahead of myself. This indicates the returns on investments remain negative, according to results of the Treasury bills auction. The government, for the first time in 6 weeks running, recorded an oversubscription. Joining us is Patrick Agama, Head of Trading at Republic Securities. And Patrick, we are told this could signal some level of investor confidence as government negotiates a deal with the International Monetary Fund for a program. Is that the same feedback you're picking?
Oh, yes. We can say that as of now, investors are eagerly waiting for what is going to happen or for more details on the negotiation. So we expect that to increase confidence in the market if that happens.
So how did we end the week last week? Tell us a bit more.
All right, so on the money market, we noticed that the government raised a total of 1.66 billion against a target of 1.1 billion. recording an oversubscription. That also happened because of the increased liquidity we are seeing on the market due to the coupons and maturities that we've seen in the past week. For this week as well, we are seeing the liquidity increase and people are beginning to take investment decisions, and that's very good for the market. The 91-day closed at 35.2% against bids that went as high as 35.5%. And then we saw the 182-day closing at 35.99% against bids that went as high as 36.3%. Again, the 91-day dominated the bids accepted by 83.4% against 16.6% for the 182-day bill.
And let's talk about the stock market, because we expect a positive trajectory from last week.
Yes, there is increasing demand for MTN and the Trust Bank Gambia, as well as the new gold ETF. Those are the three equities that moved the market up slightly last week for them to recover from the indices. So we saw that the Trust Bank Gambia jumped by 13.33% to 68 pesos per share. MTN also jumped by 1.15% to 88 pesos per share, whilst new gold ETF jumped by 1.68% to 265.8 Ghana cedis. When this continues, we expect the market indices to recover before we close the year.
All right, Patrick, you want to predict England-Iran? I know you are watching the match.
Oh, definitely England.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick Agama, there with a look at the markets, also obviously following the World Cup over there at this office. And that's the marketplace. Thanks, everybody, for watching. My name is Daryl. Kwawu, news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. See you same time tomorrow.